Underestimation breeds revelation because people often see only what they expect to see. They look at someone and decide, within seconds, what that person is capable of. It's faster that way, simpler, more comfortable to believe we can read someone at a glance. In the military, in business, in classrooms, that quick judgment becomes habit. You see someone quiet and assume weakness. You see someone small and assume fragility. You see someone uncertain and assume incompetence. But when the moment of truth arrives, when control slips and plans fall apart, the ones we counted out are often the ones who step forward. Underestimation isn't just a mistake of perception, it's an act of blindness. It's when experience turns into arrogance, when confidence hardens into tunnel vision. The general in the story saw a soldier who didn't fit the image of power. He saw hesitation and mistook it for incapability. He saw compassion and took it as softness. What he failed to see was the depth of awareness, the quiet processing, the patience of someone who notices what others overlook. That's the tragedy of underestimation. It reveals more about the one who judges than the one who's judged. When you underestimate someone, you create a vacuum of expectation. You lower the bar so far that any spark of brilliance becomes blinding. That's when revelation happens. It's the shock of realizing that the person you dismissed was holding information, skill, or courage that could change everything. And when that moment hits, it's irreversible. You can't go back to seeing them as small once they've shown you the scale of their capability. You can't unhear the coordinates that save a mission. You can't unsee the calm under pressure when everyone else is falling apart. There's a strange kind of power in being underestimated. It gives you space to observe. It lets you move quietly, without pressure, without the glare of expectation. When people dismiss you, they stop watching closely. They reveal their own weaknesses. They speak too freely. They assume you won't notice, won't understand, won't act. But the underestimated are always watching. They collect information. They learn. They wait. And when the time comes, they act with precision because they've seen the whole board while everyone else was looking at themselves. In that sense, underestimation becomes a form of camouflage. The underestimated blend in, not because they can't stand out, but because it's strategically useful. When everyone thinks you're irrelevant, you're free. You can surprise them. You can hit harder because no one saw you coming. And when the revelation happens, it shakes people, not just because of the action itself, but because it rewrites what they thought they knew. It forces them to face the limits of their perception. The general's words, "She's dead weight," were not just a statement of doubt. They were a declaration of ignorance. He believed he understood his people, believed experience gave him perfect judgment. But experience without humility breeds blindness. He never asked why she was there, what she knew, what she'd seen. He never wondered how someone quiet could survive so long in chaos. And so, when she spoke those forbidden coordinates, the revelation didn't just expose her strength, it exposed his weakness. It showed that his leadership was built on assumption, not awareness. Underestimation hurts the underestimated, but it also poisons the team, the mission, the system. It creates invisible hierarchies of worth. It convinces those in power that insight only flows from the top down. And in doing so, it cuts off the possibility of surprise, creativity, or innovation. The ones who could have changed the outcome stay silent because they know no one's listening. Until one day, they have to speak, and when they do, it's often too late for comfort. The revelation hits like a shockwave. Still, revelation has a purpose. It resets the balance. It forces a reckoning. Every time someone breaks through the weight of being underestimated, they change the narrative for everyone who comes after. They remind us that quiet does not mean weak, that doubt does not mean incompetence, that lack of recognition does not mean lack of value. Revelation is the moment when truth refuses to stay hidden any longer, when ability demands to be seen, when the underestimated rise because the situation finally demands their clarity. Underestimation breeds revelation because the human spirit has a way of pushing back against dismissal. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits, quietly sharpening itself in the shadows. Sometimes it learns from every slight, every overlooked moment, every careless remark. And when the time comes, it moves, not for validation, not for revenge, but for truth. The revelation doesn't happen because someone planned it. It happens because someone refused to stay small just to fit another person's narrow view of what strength should look like. True strength hides in silence because not every battle is loud, and not every victory comes with applause. Some of the strongest people move quietly through the world, carrying burdens no one else can see. They don't announce their pain or advertise their resilience. They just keep going. Their strength is steady, not showy. It's not built to impress. It's built to endure. In a culture that celebrates noise, confidence, and constant proof, silence becomes misunderstood. People think quiet means weak, that restraint means fear, that composure means indifference. But silence, in its pure form, is often the mark of someone who has already fought their wars and learned the futility of shouting about them. Silence can be mistaken for passivity, but it's often the opposite. It's a controlled response. It's a person choosing observation over reaction. Those who are truly strong know that not every situation deserves a voice. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every challenge needs to be met head-on. Strength is sometimes knowing when to hold your words, when to conserve your energy, and when to let others underestimate you. In that silence, clarity builds. It's in the stillness that strategy forms. The ones who talk the most are often the least sure of their footing, while those who say little are gathering understanding, waiting for the right moment to move. There is a kind of dignity in silence. It carries power without demanding recognition. It lets actions speak in ways words never can. Think of the soldier who doesn't boast about courage but steps into danger without hesitation. Think of the leader who doesn't dominate a room but steadies it with calm. Think of the person who listens longer than they speak, who absorbs chaos without becoming part of it. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's depth. It's the space where strength gathers itself, unseen but undeniable. Silence also carries a certain defiance. When someone refuses to be provoked, they take control away from those who thrive on reaction. They deny the satisfaction of chaos. The world often expects strength to roar, but real strength doesn't perform. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to convince anyone. It exists fully even when unnoticed. That's why it unsettles people. When someone holds their ground quietly, it breaks the rhythm of confrontation. It reminds others that noise isn't power, that presence can be louder than sound. In silence, people find resilience. The quiet moments are where the rebuilding happens. After the loss, after the humiliation, after the collapse, silence is what remains. It's the space where you gather the pieces and decide to stand again. True strength doesn't emerge in the spotlight. It grows in the dark, when no one is watching, when the world has stopped clapping, when it's just you and the weight of your own thoughts. That's the kind of strength that lasts, because it's not borrowed from approval or applause. It's earned in solitude. Silence can also be an act of resistance. In moments when speaking up means surrendering control, silence becomes the shield. It's the refusal to play a rigged game. It's a way of holding power without displaying it. There's courage in choosing not to respond, in refusing to justify yourself to those who've already decided who you are. That restraint is not weakness, it's mastery. It's the kind of discipline that rattles people who mistake volume for authority. The strongest people are often the ones who don't need to be seen proving it. They walk away instead of escalating. They forgive quietly. They adapt without complaint. They face storms without spectacle. And yet, their silence shouldn't be mistaken for emptiness. It's layered with thought, emotion, and purpose. Behind every quiet face, there's a story of endurance. Moments where breaking down would have been easier. Times when speaking up would have felt good but achieved nothing. Silence, in those cases, is a decision. It's control over chaos, not surrender to it. True strength in silence also lies in observation. Those who listen more than they speak notice details others miss. They see patterns, intentions, inconsistencies. Their silence becomes a tool of understanding. They know when to step in, when to stay back, and when the right word, just one, will have the most impact. It's not about never speaking. It's about speaking with purpose. That's what makes their words land harder when they finally choose to use them. Because silence gives weight to speech. When someone rarely speaks, people listen when they do. Silence teaches endurance, patience, and perspective. It's where emotions settle and truth surfaces. It's where strength learns to breathe instead of react. The world often mistakes silence for absence, but in reality, it's presence in its most controlled form. It's being there fully, without noise, without spectacle, without demand. True strength hides in silence not because it's afraid to be seen, but because it doesn't need to be. It has nothing to prove, nothing to display, nothing to defend. Knowledge is the sharpest weapon because it cuts through illusion, fear, and control. Unlike power built on force or intimidation, knowledge doesn't depend on size, strength, or authority. It belongs to anyone willing to seek it, study it, and use it. A person armed with knowledge can dismantle systems, predict outcomes, and expose lies. Knowledge doesn't shout, but its impact is undeniable. It gives clarity where chaos reigns, direction where confusion thrives. It turns vulnerability into strategy. Those who understand the world, its patterns, its motives, its hidden structures, are the ones who move quietly but decisively, shaping outcomes without being seen as threats until it's too late for others to react. The sharpness of knowledge comes from its precision. Force can overpower, but it's blunt. It breaks, smashes, overwhelms. Knowledge, on the other hand, pierces exactly where it matters. It doesn't waste energy. It doesn't need spectacle. It finds the weak point and applies pressure there. That's why the most dangerous individuals are often the ones underestimated. The thinkers, the observers, the ones who listen more than they speak. They study the field, learn the language of power, and wait for the moment when understanding can shift the entire game. Knowledge gives them leverage, and leverage is what changes everything. In a world where noise is mistaken for authority, knowledge is quiet rebellion. It's how you win without fighting, how you lead without shouting. People who lack knowledge often compensate with aggression or pride. They fill silence with volume because they fear exposure. But those who know, truly know, don't need to prove themselves. Their weapon is awareness. They can see through manipulation, read motives, and recognize deception before it unfolds. That's what makes knowledge dangerous to those who rely on control. You can't dominate someone who understands the game better than you. Knowledge isn't just information. It's the ability to connect patterns, to interpret meaning from fragments. Anyone can memorize facts, but knowledge turns facts into foresight. It lets you anticipate. It lets you act before others even realize there's a problem. That's what makes it powerful in every field: war, leadership, science, survival. The person who knows where to look, what to listen for, and when to move holds an advantage that brute strength can't replicate. Knowledge equips you to navigate uncertainty with intention instead of instinct. It makes chaos manageable. The sharpness of knowledge also lies in its permanence. You can take away resources, rank, weapons, or status, but you can't strip away what someone knows. Once learned, it lives inside the person. It travels with them, invisible yet indestructible. That's why oppressive systems fear education, why leaders obsessed with control try to keep people uninformed. They understand that knowledge erodes their dominance. When people begin to think critically, to ask questions, to understand the machinery behind decisions, control begins to fracture. Knowledge doesn't need to riot, it undermines from within. There's also a moral edge to knowledge. It gives choice. The more you understand, the harder it becomes to act blindly. Knowledge forces awareness, and awareness demands responsibility. That's the burden and the beauty of it. To know is to see beyond your own comfort. It's to recognize the consequences of action and inaction. Those who carry knowledge carry the ability to do more good or more harm than anyone else, because understanding magnifies impact. The sharpness can heal or wound, depending on the intent of the one who wields it. Knowledge transforms fear into focus. Fear thrives on the unknown, on shadows and what-ifs. But the moment you understand something, it loses its power over you. When you know how things work, you stop being afraid of them. You learn to manage them. The general who thought knowledge was secondary to command failed to see that knowing the coordinates, the map, the terrain, the unseen variables, was what truly defined control. A soldier with knowledge is not just following orders, they're navigating realities. That distinction changes outcomes. The pursuit of knowledge is not glamorous. It's often lonely, repetitive, demanding. It requires humility, the willingness to admit what you don't know, to keep asking, to keep learning even when it's uncomfortable. That humility is what sharpens the edge. The more you know, the more you realize how much remains unknown. That awareness prevents arrogance, keeps curiosity alive, and ensures that your weapon never dulls. Knowledge that stops growing becomes stale, and stale knowledge loses its edge. But when curiosity fuels it, when learning never ends, it stays lethal in every situation. Knowledge gives people agency. It turns followers into thinkers, bystanders into participants, subordinates into strategists. It's what lets a person stand in a room full of authority and hold their own without raising their voice. It's what makes silence powerful and presence commanding. The sharpest weapon doesn't have to be drawn. It just has to be understood, ready, waiting, aimed with precision at the moment when it matters most. Respect is earned, not assigned, because real authority cannot be forced. Titles, ranks, and positions might demand obedience, but they don't guarantee respect. People follow orders out of duty, but they follow people out of trust. Respect grows from consistency, from action, from the way someone handles both power and weakness. It's built over time, through choices made when no one's watching and through words spoken when everyone is. You can't inherit it, buy it, or fake it for long. The moment someone's behavior contradicts their words, respect begins to erode, no matter what insignia they wear or how loudly they command. The general who called his soldier dead weight had authority, but not respect. His words carried power, but not wisdom. Respect doesn't flow automatically from a position of command. It comes from understanding the people you lead, recognizing their worth, and treating them with a kind of honesty that doesn't waver under pressure. A person who uses rank to demand respect has already lost it, because respect is given freely, never taken. You can intimidate people into silence, but not into loyalty. The moment fear is lifted, the truth of what they think of you becomes clear. Earning respect requires listening, even when you think you already know the answer. It's about seeing beyond surface impressions, beyond assumptions of capability, and recognizing effort, discipline, and integrity in others. When leaders listen, they humanize themselves. They show that respect is mutual, not one-sided. The general who dismissed the quiet soldier forgot that leadership is a relationship, not a hierarchy. He forgot that the people under him saw more, heard more, and knew more than he realized. Respect dies when arrogance takes its place, when authority forgets that wisdom can come from anywhere. Respect also grows from accountability. People respect those who own their mistakes and learn from them, not those who deflect blame. There's a strength in saying, "I was wrong," that outranks any display of ego. It tells people you value truth over image, growth over perfection. When someone refuses to admit fault, they lose credibility. Respect follows honesty, not pride. It's why some of the most respected individuals are the ones who lead with humility, not weakness, but awareness. They know respect can't survive in an environment where people are afraid to be human. The foundation of respect is fairness. People pay attention to how you treat others, especially those who can't give you anything in return. Respect is built in moments when you choose kindness over convenience, integrity over advantage. It's revealed in how you handle power when you have it, and how you handle loss when you don't. A leader who treats everyone with equal dignity commands more loyalty than one who rewards only obedience. Fairness gives respect its structure. Without it, everything collapses into resentment and distrust. Respect isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. People don't expect flawlessness, they expect reliability. They want to know that your word means something, that you'll act according to your values even when it's inconvenient. When someone's behavior aligns with their principles, respect becomes instinctive. You don't have to question their motives, because their actions already answer for them. But when someone's words and actions split apart, respect dissolves faster than trust can repair it. Consistency, even in small things, reinforces credibility. There's also a difference between being liked and being respected. Being liked is about charm, about surface appeal. It's temporary and emotional. Respect runs deeper. It's about substance, about what a person stands for. You can like someone who entertains you, but you respect someone who challenges you, who pushes you to think, who stands firm in truth even when it's unpopular. Respect doesn't come from trying to please everyone. It comes from doing what's right, even when it costs you approval. The most respected people are often not the most comfortable to be around. They hold standards that make others rise. Earning respect takes patience. It doesn't come instantly, and it doesn't come from a single moment of heroism. It's built through repetition, through every decision to act with integrity instead of impulse. You earn it by being dependable when others falter, by standing up for those who can't, by keeping promises when no one's checking. People remember who showed up when it mattered. They remember who stayed true when it was easier to bend. Over time, that memory turns into respect that doesn't fade with circumstance. The general thought his authority gave him control, but the moment his soldier revealed knowledge beyond his comprehension, the balance shifted. Respect changed hands without a word. It wasn't taken, it was earned. It came from competence, composure, and truth revealed at the right time. That's how respect works. It moves toward authenticity, toward those who prove themselves through action rather than title. You can demand attention with power, but only character commands respect, and once it's earned, it speaks louder than any rank ever could. Leadership fails when ego leads because ego turns vision inward. It shifts focus from purpose to pride, from the mission to the mirror. When ego takes command, decisions stop being about what's right and start being about who's right. A leader driven by ego seeks validation, not truth. They silence dissent, not because it's wrong, but because it threatens their image. They forget that leadership isn't about being the loudest or the most certain. It's about guiding others toward a goal that matters more than personal recognition. Ego blinds leaders to reality, and once they stop seeing clearly, everything beneath them begins to fracture. The general who called his soldier dead weight wasn't leading from strength. He was leading from ego. His authority was fragile, dependent on perception, on the illusion of control. Ego makes leaders defensive. It makes them interpret questions as challenges and ideas as threats. When that happens, growth stops. No one speaks up. No one risks honesty. The smartest voices go silent because they know truth won't be heard, only punished. A team under ego learns to survive, not to succeed. They protect themselves, not the mission. They follow orders, but without conviction. That's when leadership begins to rot from the inside. True leadership requires humility, not insecurity disguised as confidence. Humility doesn't mean weakness, it means perspective. It means knowing that leadership is service, not status. A humble leader understands that authority is temporary and trust is earned daily. They know that every person they lead has something to teach them. Ego can't learn because ego believes it already knows. It dismisses insight, mocks vulnerability, and confuses dominance with direction. A leader ruled by ego surrounds themselves with people who agree instead of people who think, and that echo chamber becomes the slow death of progress. Ego-driven leadership fails because it prioritizes image over impact. Leaders obsessed with appearing strong often hide flaws instead of fixing them. They fear mistakes more than stagnation. But growth demands failure, and failure demands honesty. When a leader can't admit fault, the team loses the freedom to innovate. They stop taking risks. They start hiding errors, pretending everything is fine until it isn't. Ego creates an environment where truth becomes the enemy and appearance becomes the goal. In that kind of atmosphere, the mission becomes secondary to the leader's self-preservation. The damage of ego is subtle at first. It begins with small dismissals, a suggestion ignored, a contribution unacknowledged, a correction met with resentment. Over time, those small moments compound into distance. People stop trying. They disengage emotionally because they see that merit no longer matters. Ego turns leadership into a performance where only one person is allowed to shine. But leadership, at its core, is about elevation. It's about making others better, empowering them to act, to think, to grow. Ego does the opposite. It suffocates potential to protect pride. Leadership also fails when ego mistakes authority for respect. Authority is positional. Respect is relational. You can be given authority, but you can only earn respect. Ego assumes both are automatic, that people will follow simply because they have to. But forced obedience is not leadership, it's control, and control without trust never lasts. The moment people see through the facade, the moment they recognize that their leader's concern is self-image rather than shared purpose, loyalty evaporates. People may still comply, but the connection is gone. The heart leaves the work, and all that remains is obligation. Ego thrives on insecurity. It's a mask built to hide doubt. The louder it shouts, the more fragile it is. That's why ego-driven leaders overcompensate. They crave recognition, demand loyalty, and exaggerate victories. They measure success by attention rather than achievement. But leadership is not about being noticed. It's about making a difference. It's about leaving things better than you found them. When ego leads, the mission becomes a mirror reflecting back only one face, and everyone else becomes background. That's not leadership. That's performance art built on fear of irrelevance. A leader who sets ego aside creates space for truth. They listen, not just to respond, but to understand. They share credit and take responsibility. They make decisions based on the best idea, not the loudest voice. They lead with confidence grounded in competence, not arrogance fueled by insecurity. They know that admitting they don't know everything doesn't make them weaker. It makes them wiser. In contrast, an ego-led leader can't share space. They need to dominate it. They confuse control with strength, and in doing so, they lose both. Ego blinds leaders to potential in others. It keeps them from recognizing talent that might outshine them. Instead of cultivating it, they suppress it. The general who dismissed his soldier failed because he couldn't see beyond his pride. He wanted obedience, not insight. But leadership built on ego always collapses under the weight of its own insecurity. Real strength in leadership comes from trust, humility, and the courage to let others contribute fully, even when it challenges your authority. Without that, leadership becomes isolation, a voice commanding into the void, unaware that no one's listening anymore. One voice can turn the tide because change often begins with a single act of courage. It doesn't take a crowd or a movement at first, just one person willing to speak when silence feels safer. One voice can expose what's hidden, challenge what's accepted, and remind others of what's true. It cuts through noise not by being loud, but by being clear. The power of one voice lies in its conviction, its refusal to blend in when blending in would be easier. Throughout history, progress has never started with consensus. It starts with defiance, with someone saying what everyone else is afraid to say. The strength of one voice isn't measured by volume, but by authenticity. People respond to truth, even when it's uncomfortable. A single voice grounded in honesty carries farther than 1,000 empty slogans. It resonates because it comes from experience, from pain, from understanding. When a person speaks not for attention, but for purpose, their words pierce through cynicism. The general's soldier didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply spoke with precision, naming what no one else could. That moment changed everything. Authority shifted. Doubt shattered. One clear statement altered the direction of the mission. A lone voice has power because it challenges inertia. Most people stay silent not because they agree, but because they fear standing out. Conformity feels safe. Silence feels protective. But silence also protects the problem. When one person breaks that silence, it cracks the illusion that everyone accepts the way things are. Others begin to see that resistance is possible. One voice doesn't just express truth, it gives permission. It reminds people that they, too, can speak, act, Question. That's how revolutions begin, not with noise, but with a whisper that refuses to fade. The reason one voice can change everything is because truth, once spoken, can't be unheard. It lingers. It spreads. Even those who reject it can't erase it. It plants discomfort in complacent minds. It forces confrontation with what's been ignored. The general's authority depended on collective silence, on no one daring to challenge his certainty. But one sentence from the soldier shattered that illusion. When truth enters the room, ego and hierarchy lose their grip. People start to see the situation for what it is, not for how it's been presented. That moment of recognition is what turns the tide. One voice can move people because it carries emotion, not just logic. Facts inform, but emotion connects. A voice filled with conviction makes others feel the urgency, the injustice, the possibility of change. It humanizes issues that have been buried under procedure or fear. Even in systems built on order and obedience, one authentic voice can shake foundations. It's not rebellion for its own sake. It's reclamation of truth. The moment someone speaks from that place of clarity, power dynamics shift. The silence that once seemed unbreakable begins to echo with possibility. The cost of being that one voice is high. It demands courage to stand against authority, to risk being dismissed or punished. It's easy to speak when everyone agrees. It's hard to speak when you stand alone. But that's where the meaning of courage lives, not in comfort, but in conviction. Those who choose to speak understand that silence would betray something greater. They speak because they must, because the truth they carry becomes heavier the longer it's suppressed. That's why the voice that changes everything is rarely the loudest. It's the one that refuses to die down. One voice has ripple effects far beyond the moment it's used. It doesn't always create instant change, but it shifts perception. It lingers in memory. It becomes a reference point for others to follow. When someone speaks up, they create space for more voices to rise. What began as one becomes many, and momentum builds. That's how collective strength is born, from the bravery of the first. Change often appears sudden, but it's built on a foundation laid by those who spoke when no one else would. The danger of underestimating one voice is that it overlooks how influence spreads. Words travel. They inspire, challenge, provoke. They can't be contained once they've been heard. Those in power often fear a single voice more than an army, because one honest truth can unravel a web of control built on lies. Suppressing it may delay the impact, but it never erases it. Every silenced voice leaves an echo that grows louder over time. That's the paradox of control. The more tightly it grips, the more pressure it builds until someone finally breaks through. One voice can also restore humanity in moments of chaos. When fear takes over, when confusion blinds direction, one calm, steady voice can ground everyone. It reminds people who they are, what they're fighting for, why it matters. That voice doesn't need to command. It simply reminds. It brings back reason in the middle of noise. That's what the soldier's words did. She didn't argue. She revealed truth. And in that moment, the general's power, the team's panic, and the chaos of uncertainty all paused. One voice redirected the course because it carried the one thing that couldn't be ignored. Truth spoken with certainty when everyone else was lost in doubt.